Last time we learned why most manufacturing software sucks, and we ended by saying any real solution must be user-friendly and powerful for advanced users. Well, that's exactly why we have built UMH differently. In this video, I show you two big ways why we break the usual cycle of clunky, outdated manufacturing solutions and how those ways actually force us to deliver real value to users. Let's get started. Number one, we are open source and have a free community edition. Our first major shift is pretty radical, especially in manufacturing. We've made the UMH, the United Manufacturing Hub, open source and free to use. So why is it a game changer? In an open source model, the core software is free for anyone to use, modify, distribute. So it started with companies like Red Hat, but now companies like Grafana, MongoDB, TimescaleDB, InfluxDB, they all make money by offering extra features or extra services on top. But if users don't like the open source solution, they can just walk away at any minute. They can just try it out for free on their own, or they can just fork it and change it. There is no forced lock-in. And that keeps us on our toes, because if we fail to deliver user value, then the user will simply just walk away. Nobody is obligated when trying out the UMH to actually use it. And we have to do it like this because we don't come from traditional industry background. We don't have 30 years of experience in large companies, manufacturing companies, or big sales networks. We were young system integrators who somehow landed up on the shop floor, and we were hitting the same roadblocks over and over. And at one point we realized we have to break this cycle. And going open source forces us to truly focus on the user's needs. So remember from the last video, problem one, software is designed to be bought, not used. So by being open source, we flip it around. We must make our software now truly usable, or simply people will just move on. Another huge benefit, real collaboration. So one user in the UMH actually contributed and added the Backoff plugin so that he can now talk to Backoff. Or someone else fixed sensor connect issues. Or a lot of people are contributing to our documentation, fixing it and revising it. Because random folks, they submit it because they solved a headache of their own and they want to contribute to it. And compare that to closed platforms. Of course, all the manufacturing platforms are all like open, everyone can collaborate, just sign this big NDA and this big contract, and you only need to pay 100,000 euros of license per year, and now you can contribute. This is not open. Open source means that everyone can contribute. And in those closed source platforms that call themselves open might need to wait months, if not years, for a feature that may never come. In open source, you can just jump in and add it on your own, or at least open an issue and talk directly to the developers about it. And why it differs from traditional vendors? So in the old school model, you sign a license, you are locked into the pricing, the roadmap, and maybe if you open the bug, maybe they fix it, or maybe, as we talked in the last video, they just set up a support system that basically you never land up with any technical people, so maybe not. Meanwhile, we cannot rely on fancy sales decks and large industry backgrounds or insider relationships. If we don't deliver real value, then people just walk away. It's fair, it's open source. Try it out for free. So yes, we do offer enterprise upgrades for more features and support, but the entire core remains free. If it works for you, you use it. If not, no big deal. We are that confident, and this is a total shift from the usual approach. So, one example, how this mindset changes everything. Remote management. Oh man, when I look sometimes in our customer success teams, or also from my own experience, if you try to connect remotely to the shop floor, it's getting nightmare. I've seen everything for now, and I've been saying this for 2 years and always get surprised again. So it starts with going some VPN or maybe some Cisco solution where you open a browser and you log in into Windows VM. From this VM, you then RDP into a jump host. So you're already in a virtual machine, and now you RDP into another virtual machine, from which on you can then open an SSH terminal to your actual server. Through all of these corporate VPNs, this mouse lag, if you know, you can't work like this. So in the end, usually you go on site just to work with it because it's so unusable. And we've made an unusual product decision. We said, okay, so while a lot of vendors, they say, okay, yeah, just install the software, and they just ignore this problem. So, and then nobody of the engineers wants to work with it. And in the end, as I said, you hire system integrators that just try to grind through it and then make mistakes, etc., etc. We all talked about this. So we said, this is a core issue. This is so infuriating to work with. So we've built the management console with end-to-end encryption, so that's by the way patent pending, that allows you to securely connect to your UMH instances and work with it, configure it. So no labyrinth of SSH, RDPs, jump hosts needed. So, and this approach, it's very, very rare, but it really improves the time to value and working with it. Suddenly you can start productively with the system. So our second big shift addresses problem number 2 from the last video. Typical tools don't address the power user. Our solution, we started with IT/OT best practices like Kubernetes, containerization, a single YAML for all the configuration, and only then we put another layer on top of it to make it user-friendly, not the other way around, where a lot of solutions approach it like this, where have a nice UI and then try to somehow fiddle it into IT best practices to make the IT folks happy. Some folks call this overkill. We know, we will also get to that. But once you see how easily it scales and how it saves you from vendor lock-in and how much time it saves you, you will get it. So one example, anecdote, we once had to deploy tons of edge devices using Docker Compose. We were using edge devices and we're all deploying the same stack, Node-RED, Grafana. At that point of time, it was still InfluxDB, and we needed to go through these wizards, and then you did a small typo somewhere and you had to redo the whole thing again. And after doing this for 30 devices and doing so many mistakes in it, like what a typical system integrator does, this infuriating work, we just said never again, and we switched to Kubernetes and Helm. So, and now we define everything, Grafana, Node-RED, protocol converters, passwords, credentials, everything in a single YAML file. We can replicate it now easily across 5, 30 or 100 edge devices and machines, and can slightly configure it all within minutes. This is real power for advanced users. And of course, a big YAML file can scare off people who just want to click around. And this is what we've built the management console for. An UI that makes those IT/OT best practices easier to use. It sits on top of it, so you don't have to remember a bunch of commands. And yet, if you are a power user, you can always fall back to the underlying YAML file and use ChatGPT, use any scripts you want to automate the generation there and add 100 machines if you want with just a couple of commands. It's the best of both worlds. So we saw this with one of our community members, Diederik, who tried a different open source platform. It looked really great at first, it had a good user experience until he needed a very specific issue which they didn't build or they didn't want to build. And now he was 100% stuck. He couldn't proceed with his project anymore because he was missing a feature. He had nothing to fall back to. And because we're building on IT/OT best practices, we can always fall back to the underlying YAML, to the underlying Kubernetes cluster, to the underlying systems like Grafana, TimescaleDB. You can add your own database schemas. You can always fall back to that. So it doesn't matter how quick or fast or slow we are developing with new features, there is no roadblocker for you when going ahead because you're building with IT/OT best practices. And remember, like we're not some mega corporation with 30 years of being on trade shows and all fancy people, salespeople, etc. We were young system integrators who landed up on the shop floor and we were absolutely frustrated with what we would see there. And this is why we decided to do it differently. So this is how we break the cycle of bad manufacturing software. Once, open source. Because through open source, through its business model, we're actually forced to deliver the user. We're actually forced to make something different there. And second, we start with IT/OT best practices and then make them easier applicable so that we can cater to the power user. Now you might be thinking, oh, okay, so you're open source, you do have Kubernetes, you have the management console. How does it all come together in a single product? And maybe where are you not good at? Because we're not perfect. I mean, not yet. We cover that in part 3, where we will talk more about the product vision of UMH, why we're focusing on a single solution, the unified namespace, and where we as UMH are headed in the future. So, if you're curious, stick around for that.